Are drop bars only for racing? If you don't race, should you even consider this curly style handlebar? All this and more in this video. Welcome back, Pathless Peddlers, and if you're new to the channel, if you're into the non-competitive side of cycling, riding party pace, the supple life, if you have found your people, hit that subscribe button. So I get variations of this question a lot, and that is, if I don't race, why do I ride with these racy looking bars? First off, that's a big misconception because a corollary would lead you to believe that no one races on a flat bar. And we know that is completely untrue because people race mountain bikes, BMX, all sorts of different types of cycling with bars other than a drop bar. So while yes, a drop bar will be found on most road racing bikes and probably the most popular race in the world, the Tour de France, also known as the World Spin Championships this year since it's all virtual, that doesn't mean that it can't be used on other kinds of bikes like commuter bikes or touring bikes. So this shaped bar, I'm going to call it a curly bar from now on just to kind of remove the connotation of a drop bar, doesn't necessarily mean that you're racing. So that's misconception number one, and that is particularly true these days because the world of drop bars has changed from just 5 years ago, a decade ago. They've gotten wider. The actual drop has actually shrunk. They're also a little bit more compact, so far more uses than just a super aggressive road riding position. Another question I get asked often is, why don't I ride flat bars? And for me, flat bars are actually less comfortable than a drop bar. If you put your hands by your side, they naturally rest like this against your body. And on the flat bar, they put my hands like this, putting a lot of pressure on my palms and aggravating my carpal tunnel. So as I've gotten older, and because I edit all these videos on the computer and spend a lot of time with my hands like this, when I ride a bike and I don't have even a slight bend, it's actually really painful and I can't ride in that position for very long. On the flip side, if you look at a drop bar, in particular, this part of the drop bar and also this part, this places your hands in that kind of natural sideways position. So for me, when we do any kind of distance riding, anything over an hour, I really need a hand position like this. And I know the next question is, well, why don't you put bar ends on a flat bar? Well, if you look at a flat bar, they're typically pretty wide, wider than what I can fit on camera. And while it is true, it would put my hands in this position, I would also be doing it in an iron cross this wide. Again, for me, curly bars just work better with my body and how I like to ride. Another big misconception is that just because you have drop bars means you have to ride in the drops all the time. That's completely not true. And I think if you look at how most people ride, they're actually in the hoods about 80 to 90, 95% of the time even. Even the pros, when you see them pedaling along in the peloton, a lot of them are in the hoods and they reserve the drops for very specific instances. So if you're new to bikes and you're moving from a flat bar to a drop bar, don't feel like you have to be in the drops the entire time. Especially since most people actually ride up in this more comfortable position up in the hoods. So that response usually generates another question, and that is, if you ride so much in the hoods, why have this position at all? And that's because I do occasionally ride in this position. There are instances when, I want to stretch out my back a little bit more, and getting into the drop allows me to do that. Also, if it's really windy, this kind of lower position just lets you hide from the wind a little bit more and get a little bit more aerodynamic. And yes, I know I don't race, but that doesn't mean that the rules of physics don't apply to me or that I don't appreciate those rules of physics. Another advantage of the drops is when you're in the drops, you do get full leverage on the brake lever. So this is typically your most powerful braking position. Being on the drops on the descent also helps place weight on the front wheel so that doesn't slide out. It also is a very secure position because you're less likely to slip out of the hook rather than on top of the hoods here. So yes, while I do most of my riding up here, it is kind of asinine to suggest that I just cut that part off because I do occasionally use it, and when I use it, I'm glad it's there. Another big misconception is that drop bars are uncomfortable. So let's get this out of the way. Everybody's body is different, and for some people, it is truly uncomfortable, but for others, it only appears uncomfortable because when you see photographs of bikes with curly bars, it's usually with the saddle jacked all the way up and the stem slammed all the way down. So yes, if you see a photograph of a bike like that, it does look, very uncomfortable, or you have to be super flexible, or you have to be a really fit racer, and it doesn't look like it's for you. The reality is a lot of people don't ride bikes like that, and they're often photographed like that just so they look fast. I swear to God, that is mostly the reason you see bikes set up like that for photo shoots. And that leads to the next misconception, which is that you need a really drastic drop from your saddle to the top of your handlebars. Again, this is perpetuated by the road bike industrial complex and how they photograph bikes and all that stuff, when in truth there's actually a range of heights that may work for you. And it really depends on your goals. So yes, if you are into the performance side of cycling and you value aerodynamics, then chances are when you go to a bike fitter and you communicate that, they will likely set up your handlebar position so you take advantage of all those aerodynamic gains. That said, if you go to a really competent fitter that doesn't just deal with performance cyclists and you tell them, hey, I'm more into party pace riding, my big priority is comfort over speed. There's a range and variety of handlebar positions that you can choose from to best suit your riding goals. And that leads to the next misconception, that all drop bars are the same, and nothing could be further from the truth. If you look at the curly bars that track cyclists use, that looks completely different from what a road cyclist would use, from even what a cyclocross cyclist would use, to someone who is riding curly bars off-road or just touring. There's a wide variety of bars that change different dimensions. So if you've hopped on a set of curly bars and found that it wasn't to your liking, there probably is a curly bar that would work for you and a setup that would work for you as well. So lastly, I'm going to talk about what you should look for in a drop bar if you're thinking about making that move. If you're new to cycling and want to start to explore the world of curly bars, point you towards the direction of the new crop of gravel adventure bars, for lack of better terms. And the biggest reason is because they typically have a really shallow drop. So if you're not super flexible, having this really shallow drop makes this lower part more usable. If you hop on a bike with a more traditional road drop, you'll find that this lower part is kind of tough and uncomfortable to get to. Another reason I love the new crop of adventure bars is that this portion here, I believe it's called the ramp, is actually shorter when compared to the traditional road bar. So again, it shortens the reach, it puts you in a little bit more upright position, so generally more comfortable than your traditional road style drop bar. So don't let the curly bar scare you. I personally love it, even though I don't race, just because there's a multitude of positions. You can be up here in the hoods, you can be climbing and pulling back on this flat part of the bar, you can be descending on this lower part of the bar, or using this to hide from the wind. And having all these positions makes a big difference when you're riding for multiple hours and need to stretch out your back or just kind of move around on the bike so you don't stiffen up and can be more comfortable. So that's why I love drop bars, but let me know what you guys think. Do you guys completely disagree? Are you flat bar only and think I'm part of the drop bar elitist? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, keep the supple side down.